Something strange is happening, and Denzel Washington's fans are restless. It's not just a movie, it's not just another role. There's something bigger behind Gladiator 2 that few are realizing. Washington plays Macrinus, a historical figure involved in religious persecutions and power conspiracies. But what no one expected was that this story would have such disturbing parallels with real events and ancient prophecies that seem to be unfolding before us. If you think this is all just a coincidence, think again. The video reveals eerie connections between the movie's plot and a recurring historical pattern. Persecutions, governments demanding absolute guidance, mass manipulation. All this has happened before, and history shows us it can happen again. The question is not if, but when. And what if this movie is a sign of what is to come? The truth is that most people are too distracted to notice. But once you see the hidden patterns behind this plot, there's no way to ignore them. Are you ready to discover what's really at stake? Because after this, your view of history and the future will never be the same. Denzel Washington doesn't just play a character in Gladiator 2. He embodies the essence of an era of persecution, power, and corruption. Macrinus is not just a name in Roman history. He symbolizes the price of unbridled ambition. Imagine a man who started from nothing and, in his quest for the top, made moral compromises that turned him into something unrecognizable. Like many in real life, Macrinus sold his soul for influence and status, reflecting a classic theme that resonates to this day. What are we willing to sacrifice for power? The plot doesn't just cover political rise. It delves into the darkness of moral compromise and the consequences of choosing between faith and conformity. Washington's performance intensifies this duality, showing a man who, even at the peak, faces an inner emptiness. In 212 AD, the real Macrinus was at the forefront of the Praetorian Guard, a charge that placed him at the epicenter of decisions that shaped the fate of thousands. This historical detail adds weight to the narrative, making it more than mere fiction. The depth of this story is not just an external conflict, but an internal struggle of the character. How far can someone go before they completely lose themselves? It's a dilemma as old as humanity, and as current as today's headlines. And the scariest part? This kind of story tends to repeat itself. The video prompts us to reflect on how these dynamics of power and faith still manifest in today's world. But there's something even more disturbing coming to light. In 212 AD, the Roman scene was boiling, and at the center of that storm was Macrinus, appointed prefect of the Praetorian Guard. This was no ordinary charge. It had the power to influence the very fate of the empire. But with great power came difficult choices, and for Macrinus, that meant aligning with a decree that would change the lives of Christians forever. Emperor Caracalla, in an effort to strengthen the unity of the empire, imposed a decree promoting the spirit to the Roman gods. The problem? This put Christians at a deadly crossroads. Deny their faith or face persecution. Macrinus, as the executor of this policy, became a key player in the repression of religious freedom. What started as a political decision turned into a relentless hunt against those who refused to bow their knees to Rome. History repeats itself, doesn't it? Even today, we see the world demanding conformity, punishing those who challenge the status quo. The tension between obedience to the state and loyalty to faith was not a new concept, but the brutality of that era was solidified by Macrinus in history as a name associated with repression. It's amazing how, centuries later, we continue to face similar dilemmas, where personal convictions collide with social impositions. But the video goes further and makes a parallel that can make anyone's hair stand on end. Macrinus' story is not just an isolated episode from antiquity. It resonates with a prediction that transcends the centuries. The video establishes a parallel between the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire and the end-times prophecies described in the Bible. In Revelation 13 verse 7, we see a warning about a global government that demanded total submission, a direct reflection of what occurred in 212 AD, when the imperial decree required everyone to bow to the Roman gods. But what if this pattern repeats itself? The idea of a leader who will use state control to impose his will is not new. In the past, it was Rome. In the future, according to prophecies, it will be the Antichrist. The demand for loyalty to a system that contradicts Christian faith has been a problem before and may be again. It's as if history is leaving clues, The same mechanisms of coercion that existed back then may reappear, only now in an even more subtle and comprehensive form. This raises a disquieting question. Are we preparing for the challenges that will come? The video suggests that past events not only echo in the present but signal what may be to come. When we look at 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 16 to 17, which speaks of the return of Christ, we realize that the expectation of this event is not just a religious belief but a call to be alert to the signs. And the signs are already here. The Roman Empire didn't fall overnight, and its failures serve as a powerful warning. During its heyday, Rome was an unmatched military and cultural powerhouse, but internal corruption and religious intolerance were some of the seeds of its decline. The persecution of Christians was an attempt to unify the empire under a single belief system, eliminating any threat to the state's authority. But instead of destroying the Christian faith, Rome only strengthened those who refused to bow. The pattern repeats throughout history. When governments attempt to impose conformity or practices under threat, resilience grows. The persecuted Christians of that era can be compared to any group today facing pressure to stand firm in their values. Matthew 24 verses 42 to 44 reminds us of the importance of being vigilant, as challenges like these can arise at any time, and complacency is the biggest mistake we can make. The video makes us reflect on how we can learn from the mistakes of the past. Rome tried to erase the Christian faith, but it ended up being the stage for its growth. What does this tell us about current attempts to suppress ideas and beliefs? How can we ensure that we are prepared to face challenges that may test our resilience and faith? It is vital to understand history to avoid repeating the same mistakes. This film and the associated video invite us to look beyond the surface of events and to realize the lessons they may offer for the present and future. Denzel Washington's portrayal in Gladiator 2 is not just about a historical figure. It's a reflection on how the past can inform our responses to future challenges. Are you ready to look deeper and understand what's really at stake? Because after this, your perspective on history and on the future might never be the same again. Teaches us that external pressures should not cause us to back down, but instead reinforce our convictions. If history serves as a guide, then what happened back then could very well be repeating itself today, only in a more disguised manner. The video delves into the biblical warnings about the Antichrist and how his rise will be marked by deception and absolute control. According to Revelation 13 verse 7, he will have dominion over all nations, demanding unquestionable obedience. This type of tyranny is not new in the past. Rome tried to impose its pagan faith, forcing Christians to choose between life and fidelity to God. The difference? In the future, control will be even more sophisticated, with technology and global systems making submission quite significant. The narrative of persecution repeats, and the signs are already present. Society is moving towards a state of total surveillance, where those who oppose the norms and conditions run the risk of being marginalized. Just look at social media and how divergent opinions are silenced. Just as Christians in 212 AD faced persecutions for their faith, many today are pressured to conform to standards that go against their convictions. And if this scenario is just the beginning, the video's warning is clear. There is an ongoing spiritual battle. Those who are not prepared can be easily deceived. 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 16 to 17 reminds us of Christ's return. But until then, the world undergoes increasingly intense trials. What separates the strong from the weak? The readiness to recognize the signs and the courage to stand firm. But before we move forward to the future, it's worth looking at a striking example of how the past still teaches us about redemption. The struggle between freedom and spiritual slavery is a recurring theme, and the video makes a brilliant connection between the Shawshank Redemption and Christian life. In the movie, Red spends decades in prison and, upon finally gaining his freedom, realizes he doesn't know how to live outside the bars. The same happens with many people who, even freed from a destructive cycle, feel tempted to return to what imprisoned them. This isn't just fiction. It happens in real life all the time. How many times does someone escape an addiction, a toxic relationship, or a destructive habit, only to end up returning? The reason? Familiarity is more comfortable than the unknown. This is exactly what 1 Peter 2 verses 20 to 21 warns us about. Returning to sin after knowing the truth is worse than never having been freed. The video reinforces that true freedom is not just escaping prison, but learning to live outside of it, rebuilding oneself based on new values. This is a powerful concept, as it applies to all areas of life. Whether in faith, habits, or daily choices, the issue is not just getting out of prison but staying free. But the question remains, how to avoid this trap? How not to fall into the illusion that the past was better? The answer may lie in how we view time and the urgency to make decisions before it's too late. Freedom gained can be easily lost when there is no vigilance. The video emphasizes that falling back into destructive patterns is a real risk for anyone, and 1 Peter 2 verses 20 to 21 warns precisely about this. Imagine someone who has spent years fighting an addiction and, after a brief recovery, loses control completely. The problem is never the first slip, but the lack of awareness to realize that one is returning to the starting point. This danger is not limited to obvious vices, but also to the small habits that erode spiritual life. A seemingly harmless lie, a morally questionable choice, a concession here and there, all can lead to a point of no return. The video teaches us that it's not enough to avoid sin once. We must develop resilience so that it doesn't come to dominate again. And this resilience doesn't come from willpower alone, but from daily connection with solid principles. The prison analogy holds. Leaving does not mean you are free, because true freedom requires a new way of living. The video suggests that the secret to not falling back is to keep growing constantly. But for that, it's necessary to be clear about what really matters and not get distracted by what only seems important. And speaking of distractions, few things in the world are as dangerous as ignoring the signs around us. The video makes a powerful warning. Christ's return will not be announced in advance, and those who are not ready will be caught by surprise. Matthew 24 verses 42 to 44 makes this clear. The day and hour are unknown, so vigilance must be constant. It's like a thief who arrives without warning. Those who live without this awareness run the risk of being caught unprepared. And the worst feeling someone can have is realizing too late that they should have done something different. This happens all the time in life. Think about how many people ignore the signs that a relationship is ending, that an opportunity is passing by, or that their health is deteriorating, only to regret it later. The video suggests that spiritual preparation should be as natural as preparing for anything else in life. If we know that something important can happen at any moment, why wouldn't we always be ready? The urgency here is not about fear, but about responsibility. Just as no one leaves studying until the last minute for an important exam, or at least they shouldn't, no one should leave sorting out their spiritual life until it's too late. And to understand where we stand at this moment, just observe the signs that are already manifesting in the world. The signs have always been present, but not everyone pays attention. The video highlights how biblical prophecies, such as those described in Revelation 13 verse 7, connect with modern events. Wars, economic crises, natural disasters, and the growing polarization of society are not just random events. They are signs that point to something bigger. And if we are closer than we think. The problem is not a lack of warnings, but the distraction of people. Technology, the entertainment culture, and the fast-paced routine make many live without realizing that everything around is changing. Just like the Christians of 212 AD faced a decree that changed their lives, today we see a growing pressure to conform to a system that, bit by bit, redefines values. It's as if we are being prepared for something. The question is, prepared for what? Whether in the political, economic, or social scenario, the signs are everywhere. But the video not only warns about what's at stake, it challenges the viewer to reflect on how to react. If there's one certainty in 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 16 to 17, it's that history doesn't walk by chance. If the end is near, the only sensible attitude is to be ready. And this leads to the most important question of all. How to live in a way that ensures this constant preparation. Preparation for the future is not something you do once, it's a lifestyle. The video emphasizes that waiting for a definite sign before acting is a fatal mistake. Matthew 24 verses 42 to 44 teaches us that the exact moment of Christ's return is unknown. So the only wise response is to be ready all the time. But how to prepare? is not just about belief but daily practice. True faith is not theory, it's action. This means living with purpose, eliminating distractions, and prioritizing what really matters. Just like an athlete trains before a competition and a soldier prepares before war, those who want to be spiritually ready need to train their faith every day. The video suggests that this involves constant study, action based on solid principles, and a real commitment to values that don't change over time. Those who live this way will not be caught by surprise. The biggest mistake is thinking that there's plenty of time left. The world is changing fast, and history proves that those who ignore the signs always regret it later. The video ends with a provocation. What if today were your last day? How would you live differently? This is the question that defines everything. Because in the end, the only right answer is to always be ready for whatever comes. Now that you've realized what's happening, the question is, what will you do with this information? The video is not just a warning about a movie or a historical figure. It's a call to open your eyes. If history repeats itself, and the signs are everywhere, does it make sense to continue living as if nothing were happening? How many times in the past have people ignored the warnings and only realized too late? The time to act is now. Preparation is not something you do at the last minute, it's a lifestyle. Whether it's strengthening your faith, questioning the narratives imposed on you, or simply learning to see beyond the surface, every step you take today can make all the difference tomorrow. The worst mistake someone can make is thinking they still have plenty of time. Because when the changes truly arrive, will you be ready? If this content has opened your mind, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue receiving information that can change your perspective. Don't let the world distract you from what really matters. The truth is within your reach. The only question is whether you will ignore it or prepare for what comes next.